This episode is sponsored by the Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. June's featured entertainment includes Skillet on the 28th and Pete Davidson on the 29th. Details and tickets at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Country music legend Clint Black performs live at Wolf Trap in Vienna, Virginia on July 3rd. He joined me to discuss the 35th anniversary of Killin' Time, as well as his other massive hits, including Like the Rain, Nothing But the Taillights, and When I Said I Do. Hey, Clint Black. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Jason, how are you? It's good to be with you.
I'm doing all right. Yeah, we're so happy to have you back on. I guess you and I spoke, it was a couple years ago. You were playing Tyson's Corner, Virginia. It was like 2021. I remember it was during COVID because I was hitting pause and yakking from my booster shot. You didn't even know in between. I was muting in between.
Man,
but
that's brave.
Yeah, but it's nice to do a healthy interview this time. Hey, so by the way, in all seriousness, this Wolf Trap show, I guess last time you had your wife, Lisa Hartman Black, with you. Is she with you this time, or is this more, a solo tour for you?
No, she wised up and stayed home. No, we do that at like December, January every year. So the rest of the year, I'm homesick. It's much better when they're with me.
Yeah, exactly. But I assume we're still, all your greatest hits, or is there any new?
It'll be a good show. Yeah. No, it's it goes downhill a little when she's not there, but not too far. We're going to be doing the entire Killin' Time album from top to bottom in order of sequence, but we'll be doing a bunch of the other hits too. So I wasn't sure. Somebody in my band, Jake, my bass player of over 35 years, had that idea, and my managers and them got wind of it and said, "Oh, you have to do this." And I just wasn't sure that everybody wanted to hear the whole album, but it's been going really well. We've been doing it, and it's been great.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. And this tour, I mean, it is celebrating the 35th anniversary of Killin' Time, because it came out in '89, the album, and of course the title track on that. I believe, I'm pretty sure Killin' Time was the one song of yours that they picked when CMT did that top 100 country song. All those are subjective, obviously, but do you think that song is rightfully your quote career song, or just in general, why do you think that one works so well for you?
Yeah. A Better Man was the first thing that went number one, which was, I think, very rare for a debut single. And so that kind of kicked open the door. And then when Killin' Time came out, it was kind of like it was teed up. And then together they became the number 1 and 2 song of the year in Billboard. And that just solidified. I'm in. And, but, when I talk to people about that album, especially people who were in their teens at the time, that song Killin' Time is the one they talk about.
It's so singable for all, like, it could come on the radio and I'll still sing every dang word of that song. We're drinking ourselves blind. It's great.
I still love singing it. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's really cool then. I didn't realize. So you're going to do start to finish that whole Killin' Time album. So it'll be straight from the factory into Better Man, into Nobody's Home, into Walking Away, et cetera, et cetera. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been great. My favorite song to sing of old that we haven't done in 35 years is You're Gonna Leave Me Again, which I always thought was going to be one of the 5 singles they released. But I think the last one they chose was Nothing's News. And so I just haven't sung that song in 35 years. And we started doing this, and I realized, it's funny to say it's one of my songs. It's usually about Haggard or Jones, but I've just been loving doing that song. It's just been such a treat. And such a refreshment.
That's so cool. And of course,
maybe the part you edited out to make me look smart, because I'm not sure that's a word.
I told you before we started, you're the one making me look smart. I mean, you're the legend here.
Together we'll be one genius.
Yeah, exactly.
We're a team.
We're a team, exactly. Black and Fraley coming to a theater near you. Hey, by the way, so all right, so that's the tour. It's killing time. Everyone's gonna hear that. But if I can take a step back really quick, I want to remind folks. I want to know sort of like who your idols were growing up, like country music or otherwise. Like I know you were born in Jersey in '62. Great year, by the way. Yeah, that was the year the man who shot Liberty Valance, John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart. I love it.
Oh wow.
Great year for Western.
Did not know that. Yeah, I was born up there, and my parents were from Texas and Alabama, and my mom would just go up and be with her mom, who was up there with her husband, and because we don't know any more than that. But
yeah,
I was back in Houston, before I was a year old, so I grew up with that influence musically, and so I had all of the big chart toppers, Haggard and Jones and Buck and Marty Robbins and Waylon and Willie. We were getting Waylon and Willie out of Austin, probably ahead of the rest of the country.
Yeah.
We also had a lot of local acts and a great radio programmer, Bill Young, and so Houston was really bringing the country. But I had older brothers, and they were introducing me to Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and Steely Dan, and on my own, I found, James Taylor and Jimmy Buffett and Fogelberg and Croce. I really gravitated Loggins and Messina, the songwriters, and I realized, my dad taught me how to read the liner notes, and I was able to recognize when a singer wrote the song, and that's what really made me want to write all my songs.
Right.
And it had a huge influence. But the people I'm naming, the Eagles, Bob Seger and Skinner, I mean, this is a great, influence. This is a great place to learn, great people to learn standard from what is great music.
That is great music to grow up with. And it's funny. It's really funny. You mentioned Zeppelin, because literally just last night at Wolf Trap, where you're coming here in July 3rd, my wife and I went and saw Robert Plant and Alison Krauss at Wolf Trap literally last night. So we're still on a high from that, man.
Oh yeah. You heard, they always live. I saw them live when they were all alive, when Bonham was alive.
Wow.
And they always played things a little differently. They've been taking it even farther with Allison. You're hearing some really different takes, aren't you? Didn't you? On the
oh yeah. Well,
music.
That's two legends of their respective genres right there. That was a double bucket list for me.
Both.
You know what I mean? Alison Krauss, amazing. And Robert
Plant,
forget about it. All right. So then, so that's all. All right. So those are your influences that you're growing up with. And then now's about the time that you get in '89 for the debut album, Killing Time. Like we mentioned, you get signed with RCA for that. And you're part of that famous country class of '89. It was you and Garth Brooks and Travis Tritt and Alan Jackson. I mean, that's like a Mount Rushmore of 90s country that was about to come, but you guys were all that class of '89, and you, my friend, were the one that won CMA's Horizon Award for like the most promising newcomer, the next big thing. How proud were you of that, of those four eventual legends, that you were the one that was singled out?
I never thought of it that way. I was overwhelmed by it all, and it's kind of like, it could have been any one of us.
Yeah.
I think I was out in front of everyone, so I maybe had a leg up because I had already had those number 1 and 2 singles, and maybe 4 or the 5th single off of that album had gone number 1 by then. So I had a little lead on them, but to me, I was decidedly non-competitive. I thought, I'll leave that to the record company and the managers, and I'll just be an artist. And I tried not to think of it that way. I tried to just compete with myself to keep getting better. But I do show it to them every now and then when I run into them. I show them the award. Hey, look,
yeah.
That? It was me,
Hey Garth,
No,
check out my award.
I
Rub it in
think
his
it's
face
like,
a little.
if you were to ask any of the fans what happened back then, they probably wouldn't remember. We all just hit it big
Yeah.
and blasted through the '90s, and it's that first year out, could have been anybody's ball.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of blasting right through the '90s, after Killing Time, you start even in your next couple albums. I'm just gonna list a couple because there's no way we can go into all of them. But you give us We Tell Ourselves, and When My Ship Comes In, and No Time to Kill, and State of Mind, and Good Run of Bad Luck. It was a crazy number of hits there. But tell me, let's see, let's do a deep dive on Like the Rain. That I always love that one. It almost sounds like a storm rolling in, and the rain going in, and man, just tell me about sort of it's like a visual storytelling kind of song for me. Is that the key to that? The visuals we see with your words?
Yeah, well, the first place I lived when I got to Nashville was too far out of town, and so just to get back into the neighborhood, I rented a studio apartment in a high rise, and it was on the fifth floor. And Lisa and I were looking out the big window, watching it just pour, just a deluge of rain. And she always loved it when it rained because she'd spent so many years in LA where, it never rains in Southern California. So we're watching. I picked up my guitar and I start playing some chords that feel like rain chords, and the sky is darkening, and I just started writing on that theme. I never liked the rain until I walked through it with you. Being about, I'm from Houston, I didn't want it to rain, but since you love the rain, I'm glad it's raining. And so I got part of the way through that, and then wrote the rest of it with Hayden, my lead guitarist. And, that became the single off of my first greatest hits. But the record company, the head of the company, didn't like my second verse.
Really?
And so, he just thought it wasn't good enough. And, my co-producer, James Stroud, I went to him and he goes, "You could write a second verse in your sleep. Just write him another verse." and so I did. I rewrote the second verse, and I liked it better. I liked the original, but anyway, I did that. I re-recorded it during Fanfare, the craziest time to be in the studio, and got it finished. And it came out. It was a big hit, and I don't think we could do our show without it.
Oh no, they would run you out of town at Wolf Trap if you don't play Like the Rain. Well, and if weather rolls in, that's one of those songs where if for some reason the skies aren't cooperating, it almost kind of works. Like when Prince played Purple Rain at the Super Bowl, you could always just do Like the Rain in the Rain, and you're good to go. That's
We've
awesome.
done it in the rain. It works well in the rain.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep your balance. Don't slip on the stage. All right. After that, again, we won't go through all of them, but something that we do, shoes you're wearing. There's so many, but tell me, similar to what I said about the visual storytelling, Nothing But the Taillights. Tell me about that one, because to me, I can just picture you, back there with your thumb out in the wind. I think some of your songs paint beautiful pictures, even if it's, a heartbreaker, like, a girl driving away from you, but it's visual.
It's a beautiful tragedy. It's a beautiful tragedy. That's one of my fastest hits. It became a hit quicker maybe than anything. Wrote it with Steve Wariner. Went over to his house late one evening after dinner, and he had parts of the idea, and we cranked up the coffee pot and started putting the puzzle together. And when we were messing around, unrelated to that song, he played a guitar lick, and I made him teach it to me. And this is the first album where I played almost all of the electric guitars, Taillights album.
Oh, nice.
And when I was putting my guitar parts down for Nothing But the Taillights, I grabbed that lick that he taught me and adapted it to the beginning of the song. So that lick you hear at the top, right at the top of the song, comes from something he taught me that night. And later on, I pointed it out. and he couldn't even remember. He knows so many licks, he couldn't even remember teaching me that lick.
Wow.
And then down the road, I get a call from him, and he said, "Did you get your million spin certificate?" Meaning times it was played on the radio.
Yeah.
And I said, "No." And he said, "We just got ours from BMI, and this is the fastest we've ever gotten one on any song."
Wow.
And it turned out it was the fastest I'd ever gotten one. So, so it was a biggie, and we don't do a show without it either.
Awesome. That's a great story. The million spins. And I'd forgotten that Steve Warner wrote that with you. I guess that was the same. I think it might have even been the same year he had his Holes in the Floor of Heaven. So yeah, you two were rocking and rolling at the same time. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe time for one more. Let's do the one with your wife. When I Said I Do. Arguably, maybe one of the great wedding songs of all time. I mean, you'd had other female male duets with Winona, Bad Goodbye, and Martina McBride on Still Holding On. So you'd proven you could do that thing before, but just specifically with When I Said I Do with your wife. I mean, that must have been probably one of the most rewarding experiences for you ever, to be able to have a hit with your own wife.
It was fantastic. She was reluctant. I was doing the Delectrified album, which was one part, don't use any electric instruments and see if you can fool everyone. I'd agreed to do an acoustic album for RCA, and by the time they asked for it, everyone and their cousin had done an acoustic unplugged album, and so I didn't want to try that. And my manager said, "Just see if you can come up with an idea to make it interesting." So that was my idea. Try to make it sound like any other album, but don't use any electric instruments. And the other part of the album was having guests on and covering songs by artists who had influenced me. So I covered a Monty Python song, a Marshall Tucker, a Leon Russell song, and then I had guests like Kenny Loggins and Marty Stewart and Steve were on there. I'm drawing a blank right now. Edgar Winter played saxophone on the album.
Whoa.
And I started thinking, the biggest influence in my life now is my best friend, Lisa. So maybe I should come up with a way for her to contribute. So I'm standing around the kitchen, and she's making, soup or doing something, and I start writing the song, but I don't tell her. And so she would sing things along with me in the kitchen, James Taylor or whatever I was playing. Mm-hmm. And so I just start teaching her the song, and she starts singing harmonies with me. And I wrote it for 2 days around the kitchen, and then told her she has to record it with me. She was reluctant, and it almost didn't happen. And finally, she agreed to do it 4 days before my deadline. And it was a real tight deadline. So I got her on the record. I didn't tell the record company who was singing on it. And they guessed everybody but Lisa,
Who's this mystery voice?
Yeah, all the big female voices of that time, they guessed it was all wrong.
That's funny.
And they found out it was her. But maybe even before that, they said this has to be the first single. So it went to number one, and then it dropped down to number two, and then it went back to number one. And I think maybe that had only happened to me once before. And so now she has to do the Tonight Show with me. I'm not doing the Tonight Show. I made her go on tour. She was reluctant to do that. She just didn't know if the fans would think that it was right, if they wanted her, in the mix and all of that.
Right.
And when she walked out on stage for the first show, 20,000 people in Dallas, as soon as they saw her coming out, they roared, and she suddenly realized and felt so at ease. They do like this, and it made her feel so good. And then winning the ACM local event award she said, if we win, you have to do all the talking because you're the talker, and you're gonna go. Well, we're not gonna win, and haven't even been nominated in years, and so we're just nominated. Let's enjoy. And yeah, but if we win, I said we're not gonna win. We're just it's a lot of competition for this, and then we won and couldn't believe it. We got up on stage. I'm supposed to do all the talking. She started talking and never stopped, and then they played us off. So I think I said 2 words, maybe. I don't remember. She was so elated and grateful, and all of this gratitude just poured out of her.
She didn't even want to do it. And then there she is just talking away. Those knots landing muscle memories kicked in, I guess, of the being in front of the camera.
And one thing I would encourage, I don't have people covering my songs. It just doesn't happen much, if at all. But a couple did for a duets album. I would encourage everybody for a completely different version of that song. By Kenny Lattimore and Chantel Moore, and they did it and it got used in the season finale of I think One Life to Live for the big wedding episode, and they did it. It's an R&B version of the song. That just killed me. I didn't know it was happening, and one of my managers sent it to me. They just grabbed it out of country music, this R&B couple. So it was a big deal for us and for me as a writer for all of that to happen. But most importantly, that album didn't go by, that song didn't go by without her voice on it, because it's become something so special for us to sing. We have a picture of us singing it on stage when Lisa was very far along in her pregnancy with our daughter, Lily Pearl. And so there we are in a photograph on stage, all 3 of us. It's just fantastic.
That is fantastic. Well, that's great. Yeah, and like we said, I mean, you think of all the different weddings you've been a part of, or anniversaries, or I mean, it's the soundtrack to so many listeners' lives out there. That's great. Well, I guess in final seconds, that leads me to this. Then, what is the key then for such a long and lasting marriage like that? Last time, I think you said you got advice from Roy Rogers and Dale Evans on that subject. Can you remind us what it is?
Yeah, Roy found out we were getting married and said, "I'll give you one piece of advice: don't ever go to bed angry." And that's really simple advice, but so critical. Don't leave it. If you get your things worked out, don't leave them for another day, because it'll be too blurry by then. But I think the real key is that you've got to figure out all the little things that annoy and embarrass and frustrate and confuse.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And then I just stopped doing them.
That's great. That is great. It's great advice coming from legends. That's great.
Yeah. Communication, Jason, is the real key. You have to understand that you're not going to see eye to eye on everything, but you just have to talk about it and grow closer together.
I love it. Communication, and then if there is an argument, don't go to bed angry. That's solid advice right there from the one and only Clint Black, folks. Well, that's great. Hey, thank you so much for making so much time for us, and hopefully, thinking back on our 35th anniversary, hopefully it brings back great memories. And music and memories are all, I mean, you said it best. Ain't it funny how a melody brings back a memory, takes us to another place in time. And that's what happened during this interview. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thanks. That's what I was going to say, Jason. Is this was a great stroll down memory lane, and 35 years of killing time. It's fun to look back sometimes and try to see it all with a clear set of goggles.
Yeah. Clint, you are the first thing that we thought of when we thought you drank your music off our minds. It just keeps coming back. I love it.
Well, I'm
hey,
leaving
everybody.
this interview a better man.
So, Emily, I am leaving this a better man. That's true. So we could do puns all day on your stuff.
All day. That's where they came from. That's where the songs came from. A lot of them came from the things that I said all the time. You know, this killing time is killing me, or
yeah.
no, I've been better, but I've been worse.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, the best stuff's right under your nose. Just write it down and then make a song out of it. There you go. Awesome. Well, everybody, again, the legendary Clint Black, country legend, coming to Wolf Trap in Virginia on July 3rd. So everybody get your tickets now. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, it was great talking to you again, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Yeah, my wife and I, we're going to try to, we'll make a trip down to, hopefully we'll make a trip down and see you. Again, we were just there for Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, so we got to come for Clint Black. I mean, come on. All legends in my book.
Yeah, this will be different.
All right. Hey, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for your help with the show and all those kind words.
Oh, of course. You can't. Yeah, you're the love music of my life, man. Seriously, it's the least I can do. Seriously, you've given us so much with your songs, so you know.
Thank you.
All right. Be well.
Hey, you too. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.